UFC 268 is shaping up to be one of the most stacked fight cards of the year. With 2 title fights atop the marquee and several notable matchups, this event is one you would not want to miss. The main event will see round 2 of the bad blood rivalry between UFC welterweight champion Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. After seeing the two duke it out once before, it's reasonable to expect fireworks in this highly anticipated rematch. In the co-main event, Namajunas will try to prove that her UFC 261 highlight was no fluke, while Zhang aspires to reclaim the throne. Plus, Justin Gaethje will meet Michael Chandler in an all-important lightweight clash with title implications. If those reasons aren't enough to get you hyped for the November 6th pay-per-view, keep in mind that there's always the possibility that something completely unexpected might take place, as is the case for most major events. With that in mind, here are 5 bold predictions that could unfold at UFC 268. Number 5, Shane Burgos vs Billy Quarantillo will steal the show. With several big stars set to make an appearance at UFC 268, it's easy to overlook some of the minor players in the undercard. But let's not make that mistake as we look ahead to Shane Burgos vs Billy Quarantillo. This has all the makings of a show-stealing barn burner. Billy Q's last time out was a showcase of his well-rounded game. The featherweight standout looked sharp on his feet and dangerous on the ground as he bloodied and battered Gabriel Benitez to score a remarkable third-round stoppage. Meanwhile, Hurricane Shane is out for blood after dropping back-to-back fights against fellow contenders Josh Emmett and Edson Barbosa. His most recent outings might not have gone his way, but Burgos rarely fails to deliver an action-packed firefight. With the determined Quarantillo trying to crack the top 15 and Burgos equally desperate to keep his spot among the elite, we can expect nothing short of a fight of the night contender. Number 4, Frankie Edgar will prove he still has it. Let's not mince words, Frankie Edgar absolutely got demolished during his last fight. The image of Corey Sandhagen's perfectly timed flying knee became an iconic knockout to the detriment of the former lightweight champ. But don't let that single knockout distract you from the fact that Edgar has shown how brilliant he still is during his 2020 bout against Pedro Munoz. That's just one fight before he ran into Sandhagen. Against Munoz, the answer put together another stellar 5-round effort that earned him the split decision nod. In vintage Edgar fashion, the New Jersey native constantly circled and found openings for combinations. He also threw single shots when countering and blitzed his opponent with 3 or 4 punch combos through 5 rounds. Lest we forget, Edgar is still the number 8 ranked bantamweight in the UFC. Fortunately, he will have the perfect dancing partner in Marlon Vera. He's not ranked too high, not too low, and will surely be willing to stand and bang with Edgar. The former champ has been counted out too many times in his career only for him to bounce back and teach the young guns a thing or two. There's no reason to believe he can't do the same at UFC 268. Number 3, Justin Gaethje vs Michael Chandler will go the distance. Everybody seems to be in agreement that the judges won't be needed for Justin Gaethje vs Michael Chandler. With 2 explosive strikers locked inside the cage, it's not rocket science to assume that heavy bombs will be thrown and sooner or later, someone is going to be on the receiving end of a highlight. Unless, surprise surprise, Chandler uses his superior wrestling to neutralize Gaethje's ungodly power. Sure, a knockout would look better on the resume, but Chandler can't afford to play with fire on this one. After falling short in his quest for gold, Chandler needs to prove that he rightfully belongs in the upper echelon of the UFC lightweight division. If Chandler had learned anything from Gaethje's last fight, it's that the highlight can be overwhelmed when the fight shifts to the ground. That's not to say, of course, that Chandler is as dominant a wrestler as Khabib was, but if he wants to take the safest and frankly smartest path to victory, it's through out-grappling the former interim champ. Number 2, Namajunas will KO Zhang again. A segment of fans still aren't convinced that Namajunas is the best strawweight in the world. That's a reasonable stance to take, as there's not much evidence to deduce that Rose is simply the better fighter than Wei Li. Sure, a knockout is as emphatic a victory as it gets, but their first go-round ended too quickly to make such conclusions. On the flip side, we've seen this story before. UFC 268 won't be the first time Thug Rose will have to prove her worth, despite already having won the belt. It will be deja vu for Rose, who faced the exact same situation against Joanna Jędrzejczyk in 2018. Of course, we all know how that went. Rose went back-to-back against Joanna and sent her to the back of the line. It's reasonable to believe that Rose will score a repeat of her UFC 261 victory. For one, Rose has always been a lethal finisher, which is very rare in the 115-pound division. She's also a striking savant. Rose can connect with fight-ending shots seemingly out of nowhere, just like the head kick off the front leg she put Weili to sleep with. On top of that, Rose has been living rent-free inside Weili's head. The Chinese star hasn't stopped making excuses as to why she lost the initial encounter in recent months. She's also mentioned that Rose had crossed the line when she made an anti-communist comment in the lead-up to UFC-261. Whether or not Weili has a point is not the issue, but we all know too well that being too worked up tends to lead to fighters fighting recklessly, an open invitation to getting knocked out. Number 1. Kamaru Usman will make quick work of Colby Covington. In one of the most anticipated rematches in recent memory, blood rivals Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington will meet once again in the main event at UFC-268. The two best welterweights produced an instant classic the last time they were inside the octagon together. And if the second fight were to look anything like the initial encounter, we're in for a delightful treat. Except it probably won't. Usman and Covington, two decorated collegiate wrestlers, settled their first battle on the feet. Chael Sonnen's theory is that Usman and Covington both knew trying to out-wrestle the other would be a fruitless chore, so they decided to trade hands instead. But what we've learned about Usman's past few performances is that he never fights the same way twice. In a display of his flawless overall game, Usman dominated Jorge Masvidal in two different ways. Their first fight was a showcase of Usman's superior grappling, while the second fight saw a rare knockout with Masvidal on the receiving end. It appears that all the time Usman has spent training with striking whiz Trevor Whitman has immediately paid off, and if Covington would dare engage in another firefight with Usman, it's highly unlikely that he'll last long enough to hear what the judges have to say.